Hello, hello. Welcome back, everyone. Hello, and welcome back to those joining us virtually once again. I hope you have had some insightful conversations today. I've had the pleasure to pop around to a number of the different breakout sessions and a lot of really great, interesting, stimulating conversation to be had. And we're not done quite yet. I would like to introduce for our last panelist for the day, Sylvester Johnson, who is our Sustainable Partnerships Director. Now, he may just be being modest. He tells me he's not good at golf, but likes to golf a lot, so I suspect he's actually probably pretty decent. Sylvester, why don't you come to the stage and bring your panel up?
Thank you. I do recognize the fact that I'm standing between you guys and the bar, but I will ensure you that this is a treat. We were concerned because we were the last session of the day that no one would attend, but I told the group, I said, look, I'm going to be on stage so everyone's coming. So thank you all for showing up. Again, my name is Sylvester Johnson. I am the Director of Supplier Diversity for CLEAResult. I'd just like to touch on a few things that we've done since I've been on board at CLEAResult in supplier diversity because I think it's phenomenal. We spent $92 million with small and diverse suppliers for the last 3 years. Last year, we spent give a round of applause for that. That's amazing. Last year, we spent $34 million, which was an 11% increase year over year. The company wanted to ensure that supplier diversity was embedded in its go-forward strategy. So they invested in building a team, which is myself, and I have two phenomenal counterparts, Andrenica Winston, who is our supplier diversity lead in the Central. She is one of the bright minds in energy. And we also have another just kill it, knock it out of the park associate running the Western supplier diversity, which is running Oliver. So we have a great team. I work with a phenomenal team, and I work with a phenomenal company as well. With further ado, I'd like to bring my counterparts to the stage to talk about sustainability and supplier diversity and diverse partnerships. So we have Brooke Landon, we have Tracy Scott, and we have Pat Watts. Here you go. So first we'll start with introductions. Tracy, take it away.
Well, hello, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tracy Scott, the Director of Energy Programs with Energy Trust of Oregon, and it's my pleasure to be here and be a part of this esteemed panel.
Next, Brooke.
I'm Brooke Landon. I'm the Program Director for the work that CLEAResult does in the Pacific Northwest. I joined the energy efficiency industry in 2008, but before that, my background was really in more traditional nonprofits, working in peace and justice nonprofits, actually. And I left the industry in 2015, but I came back in 2021 specifically for the opportunity to work with Energy Trust of Oregon because of the work that they were doing around equity and justice. And I'm really excited to be here today sharing with my very important client and one of my favorite partners.
Last but not least, Pat.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am so pleased to be here. I am Pat Watts. I'm President and CEO of FCI Management. We're headquartered in Southern California. And this is our 25th year anniversary. And I'm really proud to say, where did that time go? We have offices in 4 different states, Oregon, New York, and Atlanta. We're an implementer of energy efficiency programs, both commercial and residential. In California, we're a licensed contractor, both B contractor and electrical contractor. So we are a contractor. We actually implement energy efficiency retrofits for our programs. Some of our programs are turnkey, so we're implementing and installing and enrolling and doing all of those things that all of us do for the programs that we and our clients execute. And also we've done a lot of corporations, lighting retrofits over the years throughout the nation. So I'm really pleased to be here. We've got about 4 projects that we're working on with CLEAResult now, and I am happy to be a partner.
No, it's actually great, and we'll stay with you first, Pat. Okay. We do understand that companies like yours, which are diverse companies, face a lot of challenges and barriers as they engage with larger companies to do business. Can you talk a little bit about how you've been able to be successful and overcome some of those barriers and challenges being a small and diverse company?
Well, the challenges with being a small business, just in and of itself, is first access to capital, first competing for talent. I mean, I could kind of go on and on about the nuances of that. There's a lot of inequity between a small business and a corporation. I mean, we don't have the ability to offer the same type of benefits that corporations do. So oftentimes we are challenged to get the top talent because we can't compete on the benefits side. You would be surprised how the differential cost, even from state to state, just to provide health insurance for small businesses is so much more expensive than it is for a corporation. Why? Because health insurance companies look at the pool of employees that they have, and the younger employees you have, or the more employees you have, it's all about volume, you get better rates. That doesn't exist with small businesses. But I will say that I do work with a lot of organizations that are focusing on legislative and policy issues that will help to sort of right that shift and make that even, but nevertheless, at this time, it's still a challenge. It's also a challenge when you're when you're growing a business and you're starting to grow nationally. That's huge, because in most cases, like for me, I am from Los Angeles, California. Born and raised, and I started my company there. I worked for a utility company in California for over 20 years, and when I started my company, I mean, we were just kind of rolling in what we did in California. And someone offered me the opportunity to open an office in New York. And I said to them, I don't know anything about New York. What do I know about New York? You know, how am I going to go start a business in New York? I mean, even though we were going to be implementing the same exact program that we were implementing in California. So sometimes you get over the barriers just by overcoming the fears and just put yourself out there and say, okay, I'm going to take a risk and I'm going to take a chance. So those are also a lot of the challenges I think that small businesses, take. Getting the right talent, making sure that all of your players are, in place, and then you learn as you go. I mean, each and every time, each and every step, each and every new contract is a learning lesson. And then you've got to build that team to be able to go out and execute that contract. So those are some of the challenges.
Great, and I will tell you that my team and I, along with some of the phenomenal partners that we have in Trinity with CLEAResult, like Brooke and our executive leadership team, we are partnering to find ways to help companies like yours overcome some of those barriers as well. Tracy, would you like to elaborate a little on how ETO actually helps small and diverse partners overcome those barriers also?
Well, yes, I guess first I'd like to kind of level set and kind of have the audience understand what mission shift Energy Trust has been under in the past 5 or 6 years. For the past 20 years, we have been successfully delivering cost-effective energy efficiency programs, and that's primarily to those industrial customers, those commercial customers, or those residential customers like you or I who have the income to be able to afford the copay that happens, the investment upfront that happens with energy efficiency and renewables. And in the past 5 or 6 years, our regulators ask us to start engaging those communities we have not served well in the past, and that's going to be our rural customers, our customers of color, our low-income customers, and still run cost-effective energy efficiency programs, and you know how challenging that can be. With that said, Energy Trust realized that if we're going to start delivering to customers we've essentially ignored for 20 years, we're going to have implementers and subcontractors who look like those who are in the communities that we're asking our prime contractors to serve. So we decided to incorporate a requirement of 20% diverse contracts, so partnerships with our prime contractors, with diverse entities, women-owned entities, veteran-owned, certainly diverse communities, and so that when we are engaging those low-income, rural, and communities of color, we have entities who reflect those populations and are able to better resonate with those communities that we're asking them to serve. We also know from our newly developed supplier diversity program, we just rolled that out in 2022, quite frankly. We ended up going down this path before we even rolled that program out. But we're finding out, we're in the discovery mode, we're finding out that some of our diverse subcontractors do have these types of hurdles, and we're trying to integrate some of the best practices that we've known from other utilities and other partners out there who have already been on the leading edge of having diverse subcontractors be a part of their network of service providers. But more importantly, we're learning almost in real time how we can reduce and lower those barriers so that we can attract more that choose to partner with our prime contractors, our program implementation contractors, as we call it. So we're in the learning mode, Sylvester. It's not kind of a done deal at this point, and we're learning and we're working with them so that we can identify these hurdles and reduce those barriers so that we can attract more.
Great. So I was in the earlier session and I heard Pat and Tracy chime in, and I was like, hell yeah, our session is going to be the shit. No, excuse me. But no, seriously. So new and diverse partnerships are a critical component to the growing industry. Brooke, can you talk a little bit about some of the things that you all are doing at the program level at CLEAResult to help support diverse partners in this growing industry?
Yeah, I think one thing that there's sometimes really straightforward, kind of boring pieces to the work that make a difference. So one of the things I've really appreciated about Energy Trust is we have, I think it's something like 30, 40 different subcontractors who work on our programs, and some of them don't even, like Pat talked about how hard it is to get insurance or how expensive it is, but some of those insurance requirements are completely out of reach for some of our small partners. So on a pretty regular basis, because I handle a lot of contracts, I'm reaching out to Energy Trust and saying, hey, here's this contractor, here's what they're doing, can we waive this insurance requirement in this instance? And we haven't ever encountered an instance where that wasn't going to be feasible. So some of that piece is really helpful. I think there's also really important to think about, sometimes there's a fear or competition mindset that comes to play, but like we have so much work that we have to do, and there's so many different aspects and layers to the work that we have to do. And CLEAResult is big, and we are very diverse, and there's a lot that we do really well, but we can't do all of it, and we're not necessarily the right entity to do all of it. So partners like Pat and other partners that we work with, it's really important to bring them into the program and to really be a true partner. Like we might be much, much bigger, but we depend on Pat and her company and her team to really co-create the work that we're doing, because we don't have all the answers. We're all going into a new realm where programs are much more complex and they're much more complicated, and we're trying to do 18,000 different things that have never been asked of the utility energy efficiency programs in the past, and we can't do it the way that we've been doing it. And so these partnerships are really, there's a lot of work that goes into it to really build that foundation of collaboration and trust, and really understanding like what, Pat, FCI, are you really good at? How do you as a company want to grow? And then figuring out opportunities that really work for FCI, as opposed to us as the big implementer putting out, here's what we need, and bring to us what we need. It's more of like, okay, what are all these different partners able to do? What are they best at? Where are they best set up to be successful? Let's have you do that. And it's a really different way of approaching the work that I think some of our routines, we're all really busy, we get into the flow and we're just doing things that's the way we've always been doing them, and we just have to really pause and interrupt that and be able to talk with our clients really openly and honestly as well, so that we're not, it goes all directions as opposed to from client to implementer to sub. It's all across the board so that we can get to a really effective solution.
That's great. Tracy, would you like to expand on that a little?
Yeah, we realize that in order for us to really incorporate those communities that we've ignored in the past, we're going to have to grow the workforce to reflect that community as well. So it's not just about our partners who are subcontractors to our primes. It's also about growing the trade ally network to really pull those communities into these great paying jobs that we've all known and have enjoyed over the past few years. We want those communities to also have access to those jobs as well. And in terms of the partnership that we have, we do count on our implementation contractors to give us that information, to understand those barriers, to know that we can't always do things as we've historically done them because we're trying to change. And in order to change, you may have to do things differently. So I welcome those opportunities, and it's not always the phone call comes directly to me. Brooke knows to call our legal department or what have you to really work out those barriers. But I'm just grateful to be a part of an organization that understands we can't do everything the same that we've done in the past if we want to impact the future differently. And so I really appreciate the partnership that we've had in working through those hurdles so that we can bring more diverse vendors to this industry that we're in.
Great, and I was so happy to join that partnership as well. I was with the company for like 2 days, and Brooke called me and was like, yo, I need you. And I'm like, I'm not sure how I can help, but we'll see what we can do. So Brooke quickly became one of my favorite people at CLEAResult. Just, going a little further on that and talking about the mindsets of, or just some of the negative stigmas associated with diverse companies. There's words like hard to reach, hard to find, disadvantage, and historically, those have been deemed as negative terms as you talk about, the historically underserved communities and historically underserved companies. Pat, can you talk a little bit about how you've been able to work to overcome those in your 25 years of sustainable business?
I could talk a lot about it. Well, truthfully, I think that we had a little bit of an advantage, because of my background. We started out as a prime contractor, and so we started out. Like I said, 20 years ago, as I heard your CEO say this morning, that CLEAResult was 20 years old, and I'm like, I've been there 5 years longer than they have. But because of that, we really bring subject matter expertise to the table. We've done these programs, we've implemented these programs, we've been the prime contractor. And because this industry was just a little bitty niche industry when it started, all the programs were targeted. Most of the utilities just would say, okay, we're going to go out and we're going to send out an RFP for a direct install program. Small business direct install programs was where we started. We ran a small business direct install program for Southern California Edison for 16 years. And we did some pretty unique things with that. We're able to bring that expertise to any of our partnerships, any of the programs that we're implementing. So we're just not a small minority woman-owned business, because I'll tell you the truth, there is a stigma to that. People stereotype that. They think that we're just given an opportunity, not that we didn't earn an opportunity. But I can tell you emphatically, it is hard to start a business. It's hard. I had no idea it would grow to where it is. I had no idea. That's not what I started out doing. I was trying to be slick. To tell you the truth, I had just taken an early retirement. I just took an early retirement package from Southern California Edison, and I couldn't go back to work for them unless I started my own business. So I thought, okay, that's pretty good. I start my own business and I can go back to work for them. And then I brought a lot of the other retirees back to work for them. And we actually started in the transmission and distribution business unit, bringing back engineers to work in that area. And we segued into the energy efficiency arena just about after that Enron meltdown in 2001. And so I said, oh, we're having an energy crisis. Oh, I know, energy efficiency is gonna be the hottest thing going. But I had no idea that it would grow to the level that it did. And so we had the opportunity to grow organically with the growth of the industry. So now we've changed our strategy a little bit. Our strategy, and it's important for us to have these partnerships and bringing our subject matter expertise to the table and sitting down and working collaboratively with our partners so that when we build out a program, it is a program that we know and we all feel good about, and we can go out there and execute. And if we have problems, we know how to go in and we address those problems and we work together at that. That's what most businesses bring to the table, because you just don't start a business just to be in business. You have to know what you're doing, and you have to be focused, you have to be strategic. We have to build our businesses the same way everyone else does, with organizational development and with the right talent. And so that, I think, is the message that I am trying to send to most people. Don't look at diverse businesses as little helpless businesses that need a handout. That's not what they want. They want to grow their business, build their business, and be able to bring, their expertise, their knowledge to the table and utilize them in that way.
Great, great. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
go ahead,
and you know, Pat talked about having 16 years of experience in a small business direct install program, and so when we were bidding on work for Energy Trust, Pat was a partner in the proposal. So again, thinking about, you know, bringing competitors or subs into the actual design of programs, which I think sometimes feels uncomfortable because we're used to doing it in a really confidential, proprietary way. But FCI was critical in how we designed our program and launched our program and then redesigned the program because, you know, nothing survives contact with reality. So we launched our small business direct install program about 2 years ago and then relaunched it about 9 months ago, or 9 months after that. And speaking of hard to reach, I know Tracy has we've been talking about that a lot, but one community that I wanted to highlight in particular, Cave Junction, Oregon. Anybody been there? One Oregonian has been there. I think another Oregonian has been there. Okay, a couple Oregonians have been there. Super small community in very southern Oregon. It's very rural, a lot of folks with low income, very high energy burden, and there had been very low participation rates in programs previously. So to kind of cut to the chase, in the previous 10 years, there had only been 10 lighting projects in that entire community. It's not a huge community, but still, only 10 projects. And through a partnership with FCI, Energy Trust, our small businesses who are the electricians who do the installs, our local community partners who we really worked very closely with on how do we reach this community, how do we work with this community, how do we meet this community with where they are. And we had a lighting blitz where in a very short period of time, I think the blitzes were over the course of a few days, but then the installations took place a couple months later. We served 42 sites in one blitz. Basically every single business in that community because it's a small community. And so I think just really using that as an example of what we can do when we have a really strong partner who knows this work really well. We work with a utility that's very active and engaged, not a utility, but a utility, sort of, the client side who's very active and engaged. And then really think about what does this community need and how do we reach that community and work with them where they are. I think the comment from our community partner when she was presenting at a regional conference was, we're not hard to reach, we've always been here. So just something that, it's really amazing what you can do when you approach the work in a really different manner. So 10 years, 10 projects, or a couple days and 42 projects.
Great.
Yeah.
No, so Tracy, I like what you said in the earlier session about the investment that Energy Trust made into overcoming some of those stigmas, the negative stigmas. Can you sort of elaborate on that for those who weren't in attendance?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Energy Trust realized that because of our mission, which of course was mandated by our Public Utility Commission to get all cost-effective energy efficiency, we didn't want to ignore the fact in doing all cost-effective energy efficiency, we had not been engaging what we call priority communities, not labeling them hard to reach or disadvantaged, but taking ownership and saying, these are communities we have not served well in the past, regardless of that mandate from the Oregon Public Utility Commissions, because communities don't want to hear excuses. They just want to see action. And so what we've done is reframed how we consider these communities, and we consider them priority communities because they're our utmost priority at this point, now that we have been given the freedom and the flexibility to go out and engage these communities. So we don't use the label hard to reach or disadvantaged. Certainly we don't consider partners like FCI and Pat Watts, who I've known for at least 6 or 7 years now, and I know the excellent job across the country that her firm has delivered. They're not disadvantaged. We're highly advantaged and privileged to have them engaging with our customers, being place-based, being parts of those communities so that there's overcoming that hurdle of trust, which we know based in Portland, and you're talking about rural Oregon, where there's a 180-degree mind shift in terms of how people view Portland, quite frankly, as an extremely left-leaning community and focused on energy efficiency, and that's not necessarily reflected in the broader southern and eastern parts of Oregon. So it's up to our partners to identify staff that is place-based or at least regionally based so that you can overcome that trust hurdle, be place-based, be focused on solutions that are tailored to those communities and be highly collaborative with those communities, centering our program design around how do we collaborate with communities so that it can inform, that information can inform our program design so that we can offer tailored solutions to them. So we count heavily on firms like PATS to be able to deliver those results for us.
Are you guys getting this? This is great information, right? I mean, great. So the bar isn't open yet, so don't worry about it. There's a single malt scotch with my name on it, but we still have a little more time, so we're going to go a little deeper. As we think about the strategy associated with just supplier diversity and diverse suppliers, I opened by talking about CLEAResult's investment in supplier diversity by giving me a job and creating a team to have a focus on that. How do we, as a part of our strategic approach, create the next FCI? Like, how do we ensure that we leave little to no businesses left behind that look like Pat and look like others in the diverse community? I'll start with Brooke.
With me, I mean, I think so. Some of what we talked about in the roundtable earlier, but being creative about how we approach things and really, this example, I won't go into a ton of details, but this is a newer project that we're working on and really thinking about, I think, Pat, you mentioned that you're a prime and a subcontractor and also could be considered an actual contractor trade. And so really recognizing the sort of like spectrum, one of the pieces I think about a lot is how interwoven our industry is. And so, folks might start out working for a contractor and then they start working for Pat and then they start working for a utility or, people moving all around. So thinking about the multiple layers and levels of what we have to do when we're doing equity work. So one of the pieces I want you to take away from this, you don't need to memorize it, but all of those little check marks, the different people and entities that are a part of an effort we're doing in Southern Oregon, working with the tribes down there, where we are working with community groups, we're working with trade allies, we're working with a housing department, and all of these folks are people that we're bringing into the industry who maybe haven't engaged with energy efficiency before, and they might spin off their own small company. They might start as a one-person consulting firm, and then they start to add another branch, another arm, whether they're doing installation, or maybe they're doing direct install, or maybe they're starting to do field services on behalf of an implementer, so they're a more formal subcontractor. So thinking about the investment that we have to make in all aspects and layers of the industry. And so the work that we're doing in Southern Oregon is no cost work. We have a little pilot with 5 homes, but it's working with the tribes who, again, have not been adequately served by programs in the past and who don't have the housing authority doesn't have, or the housing department doesn't have the capacity to do even a small amount of additional work to engage with the programs. And so we have a local community partner who's taking that on. And we've been growing through the partnership with Energy Trust, that entity's capacity to be able to do the work as a sort of another branch of the implementation arm. So I think it's do everything and do more of it and make sure you're understanding what your partners and your community partners and your trade ally partners and subcontractor partners, what they all want to be doing and what their priorities are, and then bringing what we can to that. So sort of like a big, wavy, do everything answer. But I don't know, Pat, if that resonates with you at all.
Yeah, no, it does, but I want to kind of just add a little more to that because there are any number of organizations that support small, minority, woman-owned, service-disabled, veteran, and Native American businesses. Chambers themselves advocate. They help these organizations grow through education. I mean, I have been to 5 different executive programs at top schools in the nation. It's pretty cool. But that has helped me become a better CEO, to grow a bigger company because I'm able to take that knowledge and use it and apply it in our everyday practices. There are a lot of companies out there that can grow to be an FCI or a CLEAResult for that matter, but the only thing is that if you get a certification as a small, diverse business in any way, form, or fashion, there there are some limitations to if you want to just kind of hold on to that or if you want to grow into something, because access to capital is important. And as a private company, I can't go out and get a private equity partner because now I'm not a minority woman in diverse-owned business anymore. So those are the kind of challenges, balances, and maybe those are the things that we should be working towards so that those small, diverse companies become big companies. I mean, there's lots of ways you can look at that, but the point I wanted to make is that there are chambers that represent every single group that we've talked about here that are there specifically, business organizations, the National Minority Supplier Diversity Council and the Women's Business Enterprise Council are two of the greatest organizations in this nation with affiliates throughout the nation that help individual businesses grow and sponsor annual conferences with corporate sponsors. So investments in those organizations will also help to connect you with those businesses and to help those businesses grow.
Great point. So CLEAResult is a member of those organizations now, and we do our best to make sure that we are participating in the growth and development of smaller companies so that we create more FCIs. Tracy, would you like to elaborate any on the last question?
Yeah, I'll add to that what Energy Trust is planning on doing, and we certainly have done this to a smaller degree in the past, is that we're looking to expand those investments, not just with the requirement of 20%, and I'm delighted to say, I believe CLEAResult exceeded that limit of 20% and maybe hit us at 25. I don't want to guess off the top of my head, but I can.
I think our lighting program this year is trending towards 40%.
Okay, so 40%. So fantastic for the lighting program as a single program. But, and I'm proud to say that since we had that requirement, all three of our prime contractors have exceeded our floor in meeting our expectation of having diverse representation in terms of the subcontracts we have. But with that, we also have something called community partner funding, where we're also looking at existing community-based organizations. You'll see a few of them on the slide here, where we're trying to grow capacity in those communities that have existing infrastructure for communicating and providing services to communities that may be in the urban area or in some of the rural communities, and not necessarily duplicate the work that they're doing, but offer them the funds so that they can extend their reach, the work that we do, extend our reach, I should say, into those communities that we want to serve. So we're looking to grow that even more and to invest more in those community-based organizations and to come up with really a strategy. I have one of my newest sector leads sitting out here in the audience where we have a sector, not just commercial, industrial, residential, and renewable, which we do have, but we now have communities and new initiatives where we're centering communities, understanding their needs, understanding some of the communities that are out there don't have community-based organizations that serve them. But I think a gentleman in one of the previous sessions said, there are other entities out there that kind of serve as that meeting place or information place that communities rely on, and looking to partner with them so that we can provide investments there to grow their reach. Or grow our reach, I keep saying their reach, but to grow our reach into those communities and have potentially a separate business line of energy efficiency and renewables within their existing business model. So that's how we're planning on expanding that reach and making those investments to reach more.
Great. I look around the room and I know you all have some great questions and we will get to them pretty soon. But before that, we'll have Brooke talk a little bit about the Yellow Hawk Tribal Health Center.
So this is a tribal health center that was built, and this was in 2017 was when it opened. So this was a while ago, but I thought it was it's a nice video for starters, but it's also a really nice illustration of what we can do to reach a rural tribal community, and that it wasn't done through a diverse supplier partnership, but it was the first tribal community who participated in our path to net zero. So, buildings that come online and over the course of the year are net zero with the energy use, so they're generating as much energy as they use through the year. And it was 60% more efficient. So it was our first tribal project. It was also our first Eastern Oregon, which is another rural part of the state with very low infrastructure. And this was before I came back to CLEAResult, but part of what made this project feasible was a very close relationship between Energy Trust, our program, and tribal leaders to really incorporate a high level of efficiency in a way that made sense for that community and that community's priorities. And really, really critical was Wanaha Group, who is a native-owned construction management and consulting firm that really was critical to helping make this project happen. So I didn't test how the video is going to work. I don't know if it just is going to play.
It's playing.
Great.
This land has been lived upon and inhabited by our people for thousands and thousands of years. Took care of us, and I think we have a responsibility to sustain it as much as we can.
We were proud working with Energy Trust that Yellowhawk was the first tribally owned building that's on the path to net zero.
Yellowhawk Tribal Health Center provides health care and wellness for all our community and tribal members. Sustainability and energy efficiency is a key component, both operationally and financially, for what we believe in.
All of the office spaces get natural light and natural ventilation. We went with a system called VRF, which is variable refrigerant flow. It uses liquid to transfer heat and cooling rather than air. So it's much more efficient.
The circular design of the courtyard ties into the seasons of the tribe, different first foods within each season and what the tribes did through migration.
In the center of this courtyard, there's a very large structure for shading. And from that, we actually were able to reduce our load inside so we could downsize the equipment. What you end up with is a great architectural feature because it's not just aesthetic, it's actually performing.
You know, the name Yellowhawk Clinic has been around as far as I can remember. Now put that name on this new facility.
So Gary, how are you doing today?
It just really is bringing the community together in a positive, healthy way. It just shows the progress of this tribe.
Great. So before we get to the questions, I'd like to, just have everyone give these wonderful women a round of applause. I mean, these are the brightest minds in energy, and they're actually using those bright minds to do something better in the world. So you can only get this here. So do we want to start with any questions? Anyone have any questions? No? Okay, good. Thanks, Todd.
I was curious with some of those communities you highlighted, how were those priority communities selected? Was that based on past participation, or did you use other data sets to, with Energy Trust of Oregon to identify and focus on those communities? And any sort of data that you use to, work with your subcontractors and installers and contractors that you work with?
Yeah, part of the Go Forward strategy is that we will use data analytics to identify those communities in a geographic area that we haven't yet served. This is part of the responsibility of our Communities and New Initiatives sector, which will come up with this overarching strategy. Historically, it's been the Energy Trust outreach staff, which is a complement to the program level outreach staff that is part of CLEAResult and our other program implementation contractors that give us feedback from those communities to know where there's a need. But we decided to have a more strategic approach in how we ensure we have geographic coverage of our rural communities as well, not just based on the popcorn opportunities that may pop up or the need that may pop up, but to really focus on how do we strategically impact communities in a geographical area that are around each other, and how do we build an infrastructure that can be sustainable and supporting in those Oregon is a very large state. I'm here to tell you, I've been in many states doing energy efficiency. It's a very large state. So it's a more efficient for us and for those communities to try to drive economic development so that we have trade allies that can support a region as opposed to just one area. And this is how you saw those lists there, where we saw the opportunity, we saw the need, we approached those communities, those community-based organizations to see if there was an opportunity for us to support. But going forward, our strategy will be to use the data, to use the information to help us, to help inform that decision, and then collaborate and co-create with those communities that we've identified. There probably is a need here. Would you like us to have a presence, and how can we support you achieve your goals? And we realize that energy efficiency and renewable generation, this is our focus. That's not necessarily the priorities in those communities. So our strategy is to find out what are their priorities. Can we see a linkage between that and energy efficiency and renewable generation? And if so, let's identify funds or stackable funds. I heard braiding funds earlier today, that we can support those communities in what's important to them so that we can unlock the energy efficiency and renewable generation that's important to us. And so that is part of the strategy. So we will have a comprehensive approach. But our sector is pretty young now. It's maybe 7 months at best, Alex. We're looking, he's pretty staffed up at this point. We have 6 or 7, 8 maybe employees that's in that new sector. And we're mapping out that strategy along with other strategies to help support communities and how we go about engaging them and serving them. But thank you so much for that question.
That's great. Any more questions? I know we want to get to the bar, but come on, people. We got time.
That's it.
No, I'm kidding.
Where are the drinks?
No more questions? Thank you, sir. We really appreciate it.
There's 2 questions out there.
Great.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here and giving us the great information. Brooke, something that you said that I've heard before is that these aren't necessarily hard to reach communities, that they've always been there, or for utilities, especially if we can reach these customers when we need to reach them. If they need to pay their bill or something along those lines, then we find ways to reach those customers. What ideas or recommendations do you all have on ways to better engage these communities, and how can we do a better job of reaching these hard to engage communities, I guess?
Well, I think that actually is a really good tie into some of our diverse partnerships, because a lot of, I didn't mention this, but I think hopefully most people are familiar. If you look at the tribal communities, there's not a lot of trust between the tribal communities and especially entities like a utility that can seem very governmental and official, and there's a very long history of very earned distrust. So when we think about how to engage with communities whose priorities might not be the same as Tracy was saying, like our priority is energy efficiency, I think that's a really critical piece of what some of our community partners and some of our diverse subcontractor partnerships come in, because we need to meet people where they are, and the way that we do that is not by just getting our fishing gear and showing up in town and trying to connect as humans. That maybe is one strategy. It's great fishing down there. But really trying to, I think the term Tracy was using was place-based. So getting partners who can be in and of the community and relate to the community and come in with a little bit more like pre-vetted trust, because they have that commonality. And so, like I have a particular background and experience, and it's great, it's fine, but it's very different than most of the other people in the state. And like I need to have a diverse set of partners and staff and subcontractors to be able to really connect with people and communicate. There sometimes is literal language, but there is also just cultural language and like how we talk about things and what are our modes of getting together, and like how much we follow an agenda versus being more organic and go with the flow. There's just so many different pieces that you can work really hard, and we all should be working really hard to understand how we can better relate to diverse communities. But I think that subcontractors are a fast track to that. Like hire people who already are of the community. So I don't know, Pat, if you want to say anything on
I
that.
think that I'm segueing right into this with you. Workforce development in those communities is so important because let's face it, we start with those communities as low-income communities. So what does that mean? We need economic development, workforce development. All of us here need employees, and they're getting a little hard to find. So it's really, and this is a new, still relatively new energy industry with new technology coming out. So we need to train people in how to put in heat pump water heaters and heat pump HVAC systems to work within those communities. We need to bring people in from those communities to go back into those communities to talk to the people about energy efficiency and renewable, the language that they understand. And language barrier is also a problem. So there's a way to look at this where we're not just doing good in the world of energy efficiency or climate change or any of those things, but we're doing good in the world of economic development and helping to build those communities and helping those communities become no more low-income communities. That ought to be the goal, right? That really should be the goal.
Well, and one other piece on that, Pat, is like, this is a good paying industry with a lot of different opportunities of whether people want to become plumbers or program administrators or work for utility. And another piece of bringing in partner organizations is, not everybody wants to come and work for a CLEAResult. I think it's a great place to work. I like working at it. But I have a really good friend who he has zero interest in working for a big company. And then and we also are a predominantly white team, and a lot of people don't necessarily want to work with a predominantly white team. And so, I know Pat talked about some of the challenges of being a small business, but there's also, sometimes people want to work for a small business, or they feel a little bit more comfortable coming in through a channel that is a little bit more familiar or not big and corporate and scary, which, can be really intimidating to some people. So the more different kinds of entities we have doing different aspects of the work, it gets really complicated, but it's a richer environment where we're able to grow and do a lot more work on behalf of the folks who've been left out.
No, I think economic impact through workforce development is a great way to, really just articulate the intent of going into underserved communities. I mean, I grew up in the hood. I don't make any mistakes about it. I grew up in, underserved communities. And when you enter these communities, making sure that you stress or articulate that you're bringing a benefit to that community is a great way to get their ear. And then once you do that, you just deliver on what you said you were going to deliver, and then you have a mutually beneficial relationship for years and decades. Any more questions? See, there we go. This is great.
Hi, I think this question is probably mostly for Pat. My team has the pleasure of working with Sylvester's team a lot to help try to identify diverse partners across the country for a lot of our programs. Another thing I want to mention is we always take the approach of we want to ensure that we set up an arrangement that can help those small businesses grow their businesses, right? That's top of mind for me whenever we're looking for partners. But it also occurs to me that we can maybe be intimidating, or the types of programs that we're working on, maybe they're large, and then those can also be intimidating for some very small businesses or minority-owned businesses. So what advice would you have for them in just dealing with a large company like CLEAResult, or thinking about stepping into that world of programs where a lot of times we're actually talking about scales, we're talking about thousands of homes or hundreds of businesses or what have you.
Yeah, I think mentorship, from these bigger companies is a key opportunity. Many of these companies have had a commitment to supplier diversity for some years now, have invested time in mentorship with programs internally that really teach people how to deal with your corporation, and put them one-on-one sometime where some of the opportunities might be in the future. I've been through several mentorship programs. I'm kind of a program education type junkie when it comes to this business because, again, stepping out and starting your own business is not easy. There are lots of challenges. But the mentorship is one area. Partnerships with financial institutions that will help provide access to capital. Because that's really difficult, and a lot of people don't know, and I'm going to tell it, that even getting an SBA-backed loan as a business and being a C corporation still means that as the majority owner of that corporation, if I take out a loan from the SBA, I got to put up some collateral. And that is difficult for a lot of people to, I'm like, okay, now I got to put up my home, to run this business. So that it increases our risk. So we need those partnerships to be a little bit more inclusive, to address those risks that we have to face and to help us. We need even our utility clients. We have one utility client now where we're doing a small commercial direct install program that's got a copay to go with it. You guys know those programs with copays where the customer doesn't want to pay? That's a challenge for small business. Bigger companies can absorb the loss that might come with the customers that don't pay or go bankrupt or go out of business. So I would start with mentorship. I think that's a fabulous way to help, get them in to learn your company, your business, and how do you do it?
No, it's a great question, Emily, and I'll elaborate a little on that. One of the key parts of our strategy in supply diversity at CLEAResult is growth and development. So my team and I take it upon ourselves to make sure that we are trying to identify, diverse companies with those capabilities. And if they're just not there yet, we try to work with the organizations that we're members of to bring them there. But once they're, identified as a supplier or partner at CLEAResult, it's our job to make sure that they're onboarded appropriately, right? Because onboarding is key. But then even beyond that, making sure that we are clearly communicating the expectations of that small company, right? And helping them execute to deliver on those expectations, because quite frankly, they're going to need help. They don't have the infrastructure like large companies, right? The CEO is the CFO, the HR rep, the CIO, right? So you have, and I know Pat can relate to this. You have, small companies out there with leaders who it's just one leader that wears about maybe 12 or 15 different hats. So understanding that as a large organization, you want to make sure that once you bring them on, they are going to be successful, and you do that through growth and development.
And I think an angle for some of the utility clients to think about is also, where can you get creative about reducing risk on what's really Pat's putting up our house as collateral. So could you pre-fund incentives so that, she's not having to float the cash flow of paying the incentive and then waiting the 6 weeks or 12 weeks or sometimes longer to get the incentive payment from the utility side. Or what of that copay could be risk shifted to a different entity, so it's not on Pat to bear the burden of that.
And it's trending now. Pay for performance means exactly that. You don't get paid until you screw that last widget in and invoice it, but you put out all that money, the labor, the materials, and all of those things. For businesses who haven't grown organically in this industry, that's a tough, step. It's a big, huge risk to take, because as I'm sure you guys know, I know in this industry, a lot of companies don't get paid for the performance that they made because maybe they changed the rules in the middle of the stream or something else happened, but that's real talk.
Hi, I'm curious if once you start to make inroads and build trust in a community through your partnerships, are you finding that there's a different or unique value proposition among the businesses and partners in that community to continue partnership and participation?
I think yes. For every community, every partner. We were actually talking over lunch about just engaging with customers too, and each customer's needs are very different. So I think, shifting from mass market measures, programs where you just do the marketing, have them come to access, buy your thing, get your rebate, have the instant rebate on the thing you bought, really tailoring the approach to the partner, the community, the needs of Northeast Oregon, where it's very, farming focused and tourism, is very different than Southern Oregon, which is very different than the coast, which is very different than the Willamette Valley. And I'm an Oregon chauvinist. I think it's the best state in the country. But I would guess many other places are equally diverse, where, you know, the needs of the city, the coast, the, you know, farming community, the fishing village, like whatever, like it's going to be very, very different. And the folks who have not participated in those mass market programs in the past are the ones who are not going to participate in a one-size-fits-all approach. And so that's where, you know, getting really targeted and creative and meeting people where they are and figuring out, like, what is that key to that business or that community. And there's, you know, some consistencies of the community of Cape Junction, but I don't know if, you know, Tracy, if you want to say more on that.
Yeah, absolutely. These relationships are not transactional. The way that we were able to get massive amounts of energy efficiency and renewable generation, it's probably through more transactional activity, and we will continue with that work. I mean, that has been the core of the savings that our programs count on, and we will continue, and it's probably going to be a 70-30 in terms of where the investment in terms of, I guess, the payback in savings. But the investment in time, it's going to be probably the inverse of that. These relationships are very bespoke. They require an investment of time, like any relationship does, so that we can overcome that trust hurdle. And so what we're realizing is that we're putting the investment of time with communities, and they're investing time with us, let's face it. We do want to come up with creative strategies to reimburse them for their time, because they're educating us. And that means somebody is taking their time from their core mission to educate us on how to engage their community, and they should be reimbursed for that, and we recognize that. But with that said, there's an educational hurdle that we're coming over and an investment of time, and we're committed to that, to building those relationships so that we can ensure success for the communities and for our programs. So yes, over time, those relationships, I would imagine, will change, and how we probably will identify success, perhaps, is when they start reaching out to us, you know, and asking us for more, or how can they X, or can we support them in their mission to do Y? We will consider that a successful relationship. But right now, we're in the discovery mode in a lot of these communities, and we're in it for the long haul.
We have a question from online. What have you done or wish you could do to remove operational barriers to partnering with smaller subcontractors?
Is that a question for me?
That is for Energy Trust or CLEAResult.
Okay. You want to start, Tracy? Ladies first.
Yeah, sure. So what are we doing? If you could repeat the question again, please. What are we doing to eliminate barriers to participation for smaller subs?
Yes, barriers to participating, yes, for smaller subs.
Yeah, I would have to defer that question to our trade ally contractor, who is not here. Yeah. But I would imagine smaller companies are not necessarily able to compete in the same market that we've had, you know, established trade ally contracting, HVAC, or, you know, electrical contracting firms. And what we know is that sometimes insurance requirement, and I think Brooke has already touched on that, are such that it's cost prohibitive for a lot of individual contributor or maybe two-person organizations to participate in. And so we have gone back, looked at what the requirements were for the jobs that they are doing in these smaller subcontracting firms, and look to reduce those barriers. I mean, I may not have them committed to memory, and my apologies for that. I may be a little bit removed from that, and I should be more invested in understanding some of those barriers that our trade allies may have. But I know that we have a trade ally coordinator who is representing them, who realizes that the more we go into rural communities, you're not going to have the large service providers there that are engaging customers. We actually may have to grow them organically to be able to serve those communities. And we know that that's a barrier, insurance requirements, et cetera, and we're looking to reduce those to ensure that we can bring more trade allies on board. Brooke, you may have a little bit more information from an operational.
Oh,
okay, thank you.
I know since I've been on board at CLEAResult, I mean, we all know that there isn't a silver bullet that fix all of the issues that we have, or barriers or obstacles that smaller diverse companies face. But some of the things that we have touched on is, you know, insurance, some of the insurance requirements, trying to help or assist some of the small and diverse partners handle those, but then also providing things that we can control, like favorable payment terms. Right, we all know that access to capital is a barrier for all small and diverse companies. So if we can pay them faster, they can actually keep people employed and continue to work and grow their infrastructure in their business. So it's on a case-by-case basis. It's based on the needs of the diverse partner. But again, it's top of mind for us to help or assist with removing those barriers so that we grow strong partnerships and relationships with diverse organizations.
And I think this is a little bit adjacent to the question, but I made a comment along this lines earlier, but like simplification, like making programs simpler and easier. One of the pieces about the Southern Oregon tribal work that we're doing is that it's a blanket qualification. So we know that the folks who are living in the Klamath Housing Department or housing jurisdiction, they already are income qualified to live in that community. And so instead of having each individual resident fill out paperwork and attest to their income, and then we verify it, and we spend program resources and time verifying that, or trade allies have to collect this really sensitive information. Like, again, there may be some mistrust issues about this sensitive information. Like, instead of spending all of that time and effort on compliance and oversight and making sure that we're following the explicit rules, being creative about how do we just qualify, blanket qualification for this community. And so, like, I think thinking about the utility audience here, like, where can we make things simpler and easier, shift from a oversight, compliance, verify each individual person's eligibility, and think about all the time and cost and energy that goes into that, and shift to, looking at alternate sources of just understanding, like, this zip code, we know that a certain percent of folks are already, in this, whatever, low income or moderate income, and just say, okay, we're just gonna say everybody in this area is eligible, or shift to, declaring, like, I say that I'm eligible for it, and instead of, verifying each individual, you do like an audit of 5%, like things like that reduce the cost and also reduce the barrier of getting into these programs. Because it breaks my heart when there are these, utility discount programs or low-income qualified programs that have money sitting there because the burden of just getting into the program is so high, whether it's for the trade allies or the subcontractors, just, thinking about all of the RFP requirements that some of our partners just like cannot deal with doing those proposals over and over again. So how do we just like simplify and focus on what's really critical, and shifting the focus from compliance and oversight to accessibility, simplicity, and getting more people, more services more quickly?
We have subcontractors too.
Yeah.
And so what I have found, as a prime contractor, although we're a diverse contractor, we are still required to meet our diversity goals on our contract. And what I found really helpful is to handhold, walk them through. There are a lot of contractors that are one-man shops, They're the plumber or the electrician, they're licensed, but they never thought about growing their business. But really, I need your skill. I need your skill set. So we will help you. We'll help you through whatever the requirements are. And because some of the requirements, like you say, are a pretty heavy lift, hand-holding works to help grow those businesses and bring them into the partnership.
I think more importantly for large companies like ours, recognizing the fact that it's necessary to go above and beyond to ensure the success of your subs is key and is paramount, right? Because, it's mutually beneficial, as I said. They need us just as much as we need them. So we have to make sure that we ensure the success of their company so that we ensure the success of ours as well. Everybody wants to drink, huh? You ready to go? I don't see any more questions. Are we good? Everybody's good? Okay. So look, last time, a round of applause for this phenomenal panel. I mean,
Great.
Yep.
Thank you all so much, Tracy, Pat, Brooke, Sylvester. As you can see on the screen, we have a fun night planned. There is going to be some shuttles leaving from the lobby at around 6:45, I believe. We're going to be heading to the historic Rainy Street District to head up the electric shuffle. So expect live games, music, maybe a little healthy competition, possibly some electric slide. There will be cabs. You can walk, you can scooter. We hope to see you all there. And just before we leave, I know I flashed this up, but We are kicking off at 8 a.m. with breakfast tomorrow. Don't let that deter you from having a good night. Our sessions start at 9. So we'll see you all a little later. Thank you so much for an engaging day. And thank you again to the panelists.